introduction, and welcome everybody to the PnP Weekly episode 186. It is 7th of November 2022. In the PnP Weekly, we always talk about the latest on Microsoft 365 areas, and typically we have a visitor. And today, or in this episode, it is DC Padur. DC is a principal product manager in the OneDrive SharePoint experiences team. Responsible of the pages and pages APIs and many other things. And we talk about DC's career and the different roles and his tips on moving or working as a engineer or developer and a PM and so on, and the flexibility what Microsoft nowadays actually gives for their employees as well. Now, my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a product manager from the Microsoft 365 platform areas, and with me as a co-host is Waldek Mastercards. Now, today, however, Waldek is unfortunately sick, so I'll do this really quickly with a different role. And here we go. So, typically, the second person would be Waldek. Waldek is a senior cloud advocate on the Microsoft 365 platform areas. But again, as said, Waldek is out today, being in the flu. But we wanted to record the episode anyway, so that's why I'm now in both of the screens, which is a bit of an interesting situation. Now, without the further ado, let's actually move into the interview with DC, and we'll do the weekly articles right after that. So let's jump in there.
Excellent. So let's get started on today. As I said, actually on the intro, Waldek Mastercards is unfortunately sick. He has a flu right now, so he couldn't actually make this interview. But DC, Padur, thank you for joining us on the PnP Weekly. Let's start by asking quickly, who are you and what do you do for a living? Let's start from there. Easy ones.
It's usually that's the hard one when you have to define who you are. Like there's an existential question about.
Sure.
There is, as I like to call it, there is metadata about me that I share, but who I am is a journey that I'm on, and hopefully I'll find it out. Thank you, Vesa, for having me on this episode. Great to be here. Hello all. My name is Divya Chapan Padur. My first name is really long. But I go by the name DC. That's just short for like Washington DC. It's my short nickname. Everybody calls me that, and I'm okay with that. So I'm currently a product manager in Microsoft. So we'll just do this reverse chronologically. And before being a product manager, I was also a developer in Microsoft. I actually started as a dev in the Microsoft Bing advertising platform about 10, 12 years ago. And before that, I was a graduate student at the University of Cincinnati. I love school. I love being in school, just going to taking classes and learning was a lot of fun for me. I did a master's. I almost got to the end of a PhD, but I did not finish it. But I did enroll into all the coursework and research work for the PhD. That was a fun experience as well. So I spent about 10 years in grad school. And before that, I was in India for about 20 years, schooling and undergraduate education, bachelor's education. So I come from a very, lower middle class, traditional family. Nobody in my family had been to the US, so it was a fun thing for me to come to the US and become a person. I would say my formative years have been in the US, so it's fun. So I met my wife in the US. We're married. We have 2 little kids, and life is great. And every day and every month is a challenge of new kind, and we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what does you said that you're a product manager, and to be precise, you're a principal product manager, which is even more fancier. But what does that entitle? So, what do you actually do as a product manager right now? What are the things what you own or do?
See, the metaphysical answer to what does a product manager do is always the why. We always get to talk about the what and the why. What needs to be built and why do we need to build it? And the rest of the team help us go put a structure around that vision and then go the how and the when and the dependencies and all of that. That's what everybody else helps us out with. But the what and the why is where our superpower comes from. So as a product manager, I'm a product manager in the SharePoint team. I've actually worked in different aspects of SharePoint over the past 10 years. I started out as a PM in the infrastructure team, working on internal developer tools and the cloud infrastructure experiences. And then 5 years of doing that, I wanted to change. I wanted to be on the product side of SharePoint, interacting with customers and building our experiences. So that's where I am right now, working on the SharePoint. I want to say in the portals business and the pages, the modern pages application. Those are the two areas that I am a product manager in, specifically working on what enables the platform experiences of the pages technology.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. Now. You said that as a product manager, you focus on why rather than how and what. What does that actually mean? So is that a Microsoft thing? Well, I'm a product manager as well, so I kind of know this. But for those who are watching or listening, so is that what does that mean? Why to focus on why?
So it's a great question, right? So it's not a Microsoft specific thing. The Microsoft, in fact, is aligning with the entire industry, especially the tech industry, on the terminology of product management and the title of a product manager and defining the roles. It obviously needs to gradually change from where it is now to what the rest of the communication and information technology world does. But essentially, it spans. In fact, even across technology, it spans the what and the why. Given the various problems that can be solved in the world and that could be continuously improved upon, especially with technology, it becomes rather even more specific about the what and the why in terms of problem solving and identifying which specific problem to go after and how to identify success in those missions, right? So that also becomes an important aspect of problem solving. So I kind of like to give an example it's an anecdote from my life experience that sort of captures what PMs do. The anecdote is where I'm in my dev's office and we are having a meeting, a quick stand-up meeting. Then we're kind of chatting up and he mentions that there is this dev box that keeps making a lot of noise. And it sort of bothers us in our conversation. And then he's like, I keep kicking it and it just doesn't do anything. And we take the time and I'm standing near the machine. And then I happen to notice that where he's kicking is not where the problem is. And he had to go kick the fan and the specific back of the power unit that is for the GPU on his machine in a different machine. And I said, hey, you need to kick there. And he does it. And then the problem is gone away. It's gone. And we had like a moment around it where like, hey, he's great at kicking, he knows what to do. But then the PM was there to actually listen to the signals and kind of focus on exactly this. Hey, you got to go do exactly that. And that helped. That landed was a funny moment in our feature closing. But essentially, yeah. So the PM role across the tech industry and maybe even beyond that is about looking at all available signals and being able to identify what the problem should be, what problem to solve and why we should solve it and how we might measure the success of that outcome.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of kind of reminding for those who are watching or listening also is that it's not like there's lack of ideas and lack of things and problems to solve. The challenge is really to define which problems you start solving one by one, because of course it's a journey. You go towards a certain vision or whatever, and then you start tackling one step at a time those problems or challenges or enablers in the product for doing forward. So and because every single company, even Microsoft, has a limited resources on a specific areas, you need to figure out what are the things what you want to measure first, what are the things what you want to solve first. And you said something really important also, measuring the success. So can you elaborate on that one a bit? So why does a PM needs to know how to measure success?
So the efficacy of a solution is in the entire tech industry in general has been there is a shift in what's happening in the world. So the example here being that a lot of people were not tech enabled. And the easiest outcome was just get them tech enabled, as in people who were writing with paper, just get them to type on a computer, that's done. The fact that something shipped was enough 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. The fact that something new shipped or something digital in this domain shipped was enough. Because like, hey, look, this product is out there, was success. But that has shifted. A whole lot of the world is a little bit digital, and a whole lot of the world has been. We'll get to talk about why I'm in India, but the biggest shocker for me being in India is people who have never worked with computers or not familiar with anything. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody does digital payments. The street vendor who sells onions on a cart has digital payments. So there's at that point you get to the place where it's not just enough that there is a product, it's also important that the product meets the user's needs and actually solves the problem. So the demand on technology has gotten more specific and more granular. So that is why the product manager has full with, as you said, there are so many different ideas and so many different problems to solve. And depending on what sort of organization you are in and what stage of growth you are in, there are different examples. Like you could be an early startup, you could be a mid-stage startup, you could be a large behemoth like Microsoft. It depends on those things. So in all of those things, the fundamental still stays on what is the problem to be solved and why must we solve it. Even inside Microsoft, even for SharePoint, right? A lot of customers have, probably modernized their intranets. And now we have to think about what's next. What is the next big thing to solve and why, and get ahead of the curve and try to identify that. Yeah. And that's where there's a plethora of ideas. And if we don't know which idea to pick, and if we have a gut feeling on, you listen to early signals for what to solve, and then you listen to the product signals and after post-shipping signals on usage and telemetry and user research to actually find out whether we succeeded. And that informs your next cycle. Because it's not a one and done, right? You have a 6-month cycle to ideate and ship something, but then what comes the 6 months after is measured by how well your first set of features are doing. So there has to be this iterative way of finding the right spot, finding the right investment, and keeping that growing.
Yep. Yeah, and really specifically on the metrics and measuring the successes also, of course, that helps on also picking or fine-tuning the big thing what you're defining. So if you're basically looking into getting more clicks or views, there's a big difference on how do you implement the feature and how do you define the objective. So having something viewed obviously is a different thing than having something clicked, and then there's an actionable or impact on the design, which is coming from PMs, isn't it? So the design.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, right? So it depends on where you are in the product journey. If you are in a startup mode and you have a brilliant idea and all you're looking for is a product market fit, right? So you are absolutely looking at, I have an idea, I think this is a problem worth solving. I'm going to go find the niche of people who are going to value the fact that I am solving this problem with technology or any other method possible. And that product market fit journey is different, and the what and the why there are a different experience than a standardized product like Microsoft SharePoint, where a product manager's task is to go make it more accessible.
Yep.
Right? Accessibility is not a MAU game. Nobody does accessibility because 2 days or 2 months after you ship, 10,000 people are going to be using your accessibility feature. That's not how the MAU game works, right? Because accessibility is a compliance feature. It is how you make sure that the product that you ship is truly global and truly available to everybody, and aligning with our Microsoft principle of empowering every person. The every has a value there, and that's what accessibility is about, right? So though both of them have a PM title, both of them are still going to do a prioritization exercise of amongst my accessibility issues, which ones am I going to go tackle first? But the success criteria are absolutely different.
Yeah.
One is about the fit. I want more people to come to the top of my funnel. And 2 years after I've had 1 million users, then I'm going to go figure out why my retention is not greater than where it should be. And that's a different cycle and a different ballgame. But nevertheless, the questions always start with the what and the why.
Yeah, that's actually really, accessibility is a really good example, by the way, because it's not a MAUK, as you said. It's a thing where we in Microsoft, we need to invest, and we are investing, but it's not because we want to have specifically new users. We want to have everybody to have access on the features and capabilities, because that's part of the values what we represent. Really good point, actually. Now let's go back on time a bit before we go back on where you are right now and all of that. But let's do a few exercises on your historical things. So you've done a developer. You were a developer first in Microsoft. Mm-hmm. How did you get to Microsoft? Is somebody who's looking into? I'm a developer. I want to be in Microsoft. What would be like few tips on getting started on, or is it just applying and hoping the best? Or are there any tricks?
I don't want to say the traditional route does not work. There are examples of that having worked, but I believe the higher rate of success is with networking. The reason I'm in Microsoft is because a friend referred me.
Yeah,
the friend was leaving, and she wanted to refer me, and she did, to her own manager. And because she referred, because of the referral coming from her, the manager had one call with me.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have had that call with that manager if I had just cold called or just sent an email with my resume to them, right? That wouldn't have happened. That personal reference is what got me the call. The manager was interested, and then I got into a full loop. And that's, you do well in the conversation. And I come from a non-computer science background. While I'm familiar with coding, I've never done what might be considered as a traditional internship in coding, or internship in the software lifecycle experiences, right? So I prepared for the interview, but the way I talked and the way I was unpacking the problem is why I got the developer role as the entry-level developer in Microsoft. So I would say, sure, definitely keep applying. You never know which, unless you knock on the door, you never know which door is going to open. Sure. But build your network, spend your time in connecting with people, making genuine connections with them, and making them see who you are. Because the person who referred me did not know me technically. They knew me personally as a part of a nonprofit that both of us were volunteering in.
Yep.
Right? That's how they knew me. There's the person value is what made them refer me, not my technical capability.
Yep, which is quite often the case, because it's of course the technical skills are important, but then again, you want to have people in the team who the chemistry works, and you get along, and who are maybe showcasing other people in the team as well. Their mental mindset is a bit of a different. It's not just about the technical skills. Nothing wrong with being also just technical, which is cool as well. But we do need different kind of people in a team to have the right level of diversity within a team, which typically then raises the whole common skill set of the team as well.
Yep, absolutely. Everything is, from a growth mindset point of view, everything is learnable. Even soft skills are learnable. But what comes across is where you begin that journey. And the time it takes to learn something soft versus learn something as a hard skill. Hard skills are much faster learned and retained than soft skills.
True. Absolutely. Now, you actually mentioned on the networking, just to drill you there a bit. So what would be the ways of networking? Of course, you said already the volunteering on a non-profit organization, school probably is a good way of having those connections. Any other things come to mind? What does the networking mean? How do you network with people?
I think there's a saying. It's not my saying. I will share that, and which resonates with me. Right? You don't network when you need the network. You just network. You make connections. You prove that you are a person who cares about others and you are helping. And not with my interaction with the person who referred me to Microsoft was never with the intention that they would one day refer me. It was never in the picture. Right? It just so happened that we met up and we were volunteering together. We
stayed in touch, we became friends. And then one day I was like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Oh, okay, I'll refer you. Right?
Yep.
That's it, right? So
yep.
For somebody who's on the cusp of looking for a job right now, especially with the world economy and the situation with the tech world as such, I would say, if you were already employed, see if you can find your erstwhile managers, somebody else who can help you refer. That's one way. If you're fresh out of college and you're trying to get a new job in this terrible, I don't want to use the R word, but the terrible situation right now, go back to your, the alumni of your institution that you might have met before when they were seniors in your organization, in your school. LinkedIn is absolutely, it's a great way, and show up to these grad fairs. So a lot of people make great personal connections. Go to recruitment fairs and show your face and have a conversation with them. A lot of people will remember your face and interaction a lot more than the resume on their paper that they have. So and make an impression and start building towards that. And once you get a job, don't stop, right? Keep contributing, give back as much as you can all the time. And then maybe, hopefully you don't need it ever, but if you do ever need the network, you have the network.
Yeah. Exactly. That's actually a really important thing as well. What you said is that don't stop whenever you get the job as well, because you want to actually keep on having that growth mindset and the natural, not necessarily intentional way of networking, but the natural way of networking, just being you and connecting with people and helping people where suitable. Because again, helping other people will definitely always leave a mark. People will remember that. And if you are a technical or you're in the community for writing code or all of that, all open source and community channels which we have are great ways of doing this, because again, it gives you the opportunity of showcasing what you've done and what you're capable of doing. And that's precisely why we raise people, or why we ask people to do community demos and all of that in our calls as well. But it's having that opportunity and exposure. Now, from developer, you went to be then a PM. And before we go to the current life situation and everything else, how does one get to be a PM? What is the few tips on, development, this is cool, but now I want to do coordination. How did that happen?
Yeah. So it's another funny anecdote in my life, right? In my, at least, career. When I joined Microsoft, I did not know there was a thing called PM. I was of the mindset where you write code and the code solves a problem. That's it, right? Like, what else besides code is there? So 3 months into my job as a new developer, I had a conversation with my manager in the one-on-one, and I'm asking him this question: dude, why aren't you telling me what to do? Why is this other guy whose title is program manager telling me what to do? And that, he sort of explained, I help you with your career, I help you with solving the problems, learning the skills and whatnot. But the program managers are who decide what needs to get built and when it gets built and the sequence of building those things. And that sort of lit a bulb in my head, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So it's not that straightforward. It's not just I wrote, and I was a UX developer at that time, and I'm like, I shipped this piece of code and then everything is magically working. No, somebody did the work to figure out that this button needs to show up precisely at this time, where all the backend systems have already lined up, and this button interacts with that API and that database, and that's how everything works, right? That was an aha moment for me 4 months into my thing, where it's like, early on, the excitement of Microsoft, and you were learning new things and you're building real software. I never questioned, how did this API come to be? Like, you were telling me to call this API. I never asked the question. There was a spec, there was a thing, I just got, hey, that's working great. So that sort of triggered in my mind. I'm like, oh, there is this role. I should go explore that. At that time, there was also the SDET role, the tester role at that time. So I told myself, from a career point of view, I want to go see what these other roles mean as well. Why does a test role exist? What do they do that's different from what I do? I told myself I'll spend 2 years as a developer, 2 years as a PM, 2 years as a test, and then I evaluate what I want the most, where I had the most fun, and continue doing that.
Yep.
So I was a dev for 2 years. It sort of culminated where my entire team was sort of disbanding. My manager was leaving. Everybody in my team was leaving. And I took the chance to just go explore PM roles at that time. And though that was a time when there was no online resource, or maybe I didn't search enough. There were no internal roles. There was no mentoring sessions. Like I didn't speak with a PM before interviewing for a PM role, because I didn't know I could just ping somebody and say, "Can I have a conversation with you?" I didn't know that.
Yep.
I felt I shouldn't be asking. I should already know it. There's all these, syndromes that people can do this.
When we were younger, that's so kind of they must be assuming that we already know this, and no, we don't.
Exactly.
And no, we don't know either. It's okay to ask.
Ask, exactly. And it was not that. It was not that the career conversations and career coaching. At least I didn't see it that much. Like right now in our organization, there is all these mentoring conversations happening. If you go into the Twitter world, there are so many PMs who are posting their knowledge. There was no Twitter when I joined. All these interesting things were happening at that time, right?
Yep.
At this time, I didn't have that, or I was not privy to those things. So I slogged it myself, and I went from a front-end UX developer for a consumer product. I went to becoming a back-end services PM for an enterprise product. Completely diagonally different things. So it was good, and I was never looking back. So 2 years after I became a PM, they shut down the test role completely.
Yeah.
And then obviously I was not going to try that, and I was having a lot of fun being a PM. And SharePoint was an awesome place to be a PM. And blah de blah. 10 years have gone. And I'm doing a podcast about being a PM. I can't.
There we go. Exactly. So, but coming on the PM, we need to talk about the testing role a bit, because I know that's when you said that, some people are like, "Aha, now I know." But let's talk about that one in a second, because it's good to have an open discussion on that as well. But I would say for the PM part, I love. The PM is, of course, in Microsoft, it's a super complicated role, because every single PM defines the PM role a bit differently, right? But one of the cool things to think about it, that I was just thinking as you were explaining that, is it's almost like the web, the spider web, but you're the one who's making all of the different connections. So there are a lot of people, like developers, are quite often being asked just to focus on your thing. You're technical, you're really good at on what you're doing. You don't need to worry about that thing over there. But as a PM, you're the one who needs to understand bit of that, 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 and then doing the connections between them, and then being the kind of the glue between the different people and shipment. Is that a good way of putting that?
Yeah, it's a good way of putting one aspect of what you do in your stage of life, like in the stage of career as well. Like I have come to realize that maybe early on developers can be siloed. When you are a dev 1, dev 2, maybe even up to a senior developer, right? When you get to be a principal developer, you still need to widen your horizon and go look at what's going on in the world. So you still can't be silent. I'm just going to write code and not do anything else. Yeah. So the complexity of the world that we live in is reflected in how organizations are structured to solve the problems for the world that we live in.
Yep.
Where it's no longer that simple where just a person writes code, just a person tests the code, another person writes a spec which was 3 years old when the code is being written, because nothing has changed in the world. No. The world is changing really, really fast, right? So the complexity and the speed of execution mean that while there are these roles defined as product manager and your TPM maybe in other organizations and developer, designer, everybody's got to be at least a little bit familiar with what the other person is doing.
True.
So the way I am internalizing my product manager role is, you are the person, or there is the directly responsible individual for solving this problem or shipping this feature or getting this out. You do whatever it takes. Because of course you're not going to write the code, because there are requirements and qualities and everything to be done. But short of writing the code yourself,
you are responsible for everything. Or short of designing the product yourself, you drive to you find the people, you find the funding, you get the work done, and you get the connections made, as you said. Where the web of activities, if you lay the web, if your web, you gotta go do the things, but you make sure that everybody else is also aware of all other work that is happening and land the work successfully.
Yeah, because then you make sure that there's no whenever you're handing off for the following person to take it, it does not drop between the cracks or whatever, because you understand enough that the handover happens. Now, you said that we no longer have testers. I need to jump on that, because otherwise somebody's going to put it in the comments of the video or in the podcast and saying, ha, Microsoft doesn't have testers. What happened? What? How is that possible?
No. So this is very good point. It's not that nobody tests code. That's not what I said, right?
Yep.
So the evolution of an organization and the structures and the titles and the job definitions have to reflect what the world does. This is exactly what I said, right? We are no longer in the waterfall world of somebody writes a spec for 9 months and then hands it over to a developer who writes code for 6 months and then hands it over to a tester who will test it for another 6 months before somebody prints a DVD and ships it out to the world. That's not the world we are living in. So we had to get to the place where a developer has more responsibility towards the code, the test-driven development, or the developer being responsible for the quality of the work they do. And it puts the forcing function on the infrastructure team to go say, hey, we don't have the infrastructure to have test-driven development. Go build that, right? If you do not have that, then we start leaning on people instead of efficiency of code, which is not a great use of resources, right? So it's not that we remove the testers title and remove the testers themselves. Everybody got made developers, and they become developers or they become PMs. They find their passion in how they want to do. They upskill themselves to become what they need to be. But in general, the testing functionality has been absorbed into the developer role. The monitoring and the telemetry, all of that gets absorbed into the developer role. And PMs now need to be aware that you need to budget for that as a part of feature rollout. You can't just say code complete for the primary feature and I'm done.
Yeah.
You got to have telemetry. You got to have accessibility. You got to have reliable monitoring of your feature. You need to make sure that every check-in is a production level quality in your environment. So those are the service experiences, the cloud-born experiences that everybody needs to be ascribing to, and that's why we don't have a dedicated title called tester.
Yep.
It doesn't serve the purpose of the world we live in.
Yep. Makes perfect sense. I had to jump on that because otherwise we'll get the comment self-related on. But that's a good way of explaining that change. So.
Absolutely. And there is always going to be bugs. So I don't think people need to point out the bug and say, this is why Microsoft code. And all code has bugs. I don't know of any company or anything shipped ever, not just technical products. Right? Even the chair that I'm sitting in right now has a bug in it. So that's okay. Yep. That's just the fact of life. But that's the interesting paradigm shift is we understood how the cloud services need to work and how every role needs to be aware of, be responsible for the quality of the work they do. And that's why this was a forcing function to get that done.
Yep, absolutely.
At least that's how I see it.
That's a good way of explaining that. That is a really good way of explaining that. Now, let's then jump on the current time and a location and everything. So you talked about the fact that you actually graduated from US as a master's. You went to the Microsoft in the US and you worked in the OneDrive SharePoint organization or SharePoint organization in Redmond. But you actually currently are calling from India. And you've been actually working remotely from India now for a while. What happened? I don't even know all of the details. So this is actually interesting for me as well.
Yes. So before I do that, there's just absolute thanks to my organization, Microsoft, as a company where number one priority is its own employees. It treats its own employees really, really well. So this hats off to that approach, especially in the current climate. I can't stress enough about why while customers are very important to your organization, even more important are the people that work to solve your customers' problems. So take care of them really, really well.
And I am a prime example of how Microsoft and my team has taken great care of me. And it just started with 6 months ago. So my wife works in academia. She's a professor of computer science in the University of Washington.
Cool.
So she got promoted and she got a year of sabbatical. So there's a concept of a sabbatical in academic circles. Many of you might be familiar with that, which allows you for a year of time off from your regular teaching duties to fully focus on your research work, go make connections across the world. And that's what spurs, interesting conversations between research institutions. We were discussing where to go spend that 1 year, maybe 2-3 months here, 3 months there. And then there was a spark of idea of, hey, why not go back to India? And this is the post-pandemic mindset where, suddenly everybody is realizing what's important in life, and people take time off and they go back to the roots, spend time with family, chase their passion. There is that. And we are not exempted to that as well, right? So we were cooped up for 2.5 years worrying about parents who live in a far-off land. And we thought this was a great opportunity, 1 year where there is no necessity, there is no forcing function for me to be there, but of our own choice, supported by our places of work, we are able to go spend that 1 year in India and be close to our parents, be close to family, expose our kids to the life that we had led. My wife and I are both from India, and we're from the same place in India. So it helps us to go live that again and show our kids what we went through. So that's, and OneDrive and SharePoint, the leadership. I'm gonna voice up to Adam Harmatz, who's Vesa and I's manager. He was extremely supportive of this venture. So thanks to him and everybody else up the chain as well. It was great. So basically, I'm an employee of Microsoft India right now for a year, sort of on loan. I work so it was also interesting. Like, it was a culmination of good things. So now I'm working on a couple of projects which are work with China team and the India team, which means some of my daytime I get to work on projects that work with those teams there, and in the nighttime I get to have meetings with my US counterparts and something. There is trade-off. The question is, aren't you working all the time? It does seem like that. I'm on meetings in the nighttime, I'm on meetings in the daytime. So there's this, but it's a good blend. My org trusts me to do the right thing and have impact. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it's India from a location perspective. You're then closer to the India development team and then China team, because China, Shanghai and Changshu is it 12 hours from Richmond? So it overlaps completely in a
completely.
Yeah,
it's more than 12 hours. Right now, It's 12 hours Pacific Coast in India, and they are 13 and a half or 14 and a half, depending on where you are in China. So it's, it gets easier for me to coordinate with my China team for my projects and the India team for my projects. And more than half of it is the US team, and I do that as well.
Now, I do this. Obviously, I've been doing this for many, many years already, and thank you for ODSP and engineering and leadership for allowing this to happen and not forcing to move the Redmond. But how do you deal with the time zone and the time zone differences, and how do you decide which meetings you actually take? Because I can imagine, as a principal PM, you get a lot of meeting requests where you might want to be or might not want to be. So what is your kind of a trick on handling this in a bit more asynchronous way?
Yeah, two things, right? First thing, it's a forcing function for me as well in terms of getting better with written communications. While, a lot of people would say this meeting could have been an email. And a lot of times it's this kind of situation forces you to think about, should this actually be a meeting or can this be an email? So why don't I try the email route first and then decide if I need a meeting? So that forces the written clarification, written communication aspect of it a lot more. And that helps prioritize meetings for me. And not just my PM leadership, my entire network of my developers, individuals, everybody is working with me to make sure that they do the meetings in the morning of Pacific time, which puts the meetings at a reasonable hour during the night time for me. And so all of my meetings, so pretty much I do 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., 1 a.m.
just meetings, nothing else. So just pack the meetings in the morning. So I mean, so far I haven't had a trouble trying to find a spot to meet with people, even within a 1 week's notice.
Yeah, makes sense. But I do actually something similar, which is I work in a shifted hours in the same way, not as radical as you, because from India it's even 3 hours more shifted.
Yeah.
But my days typically end at 10 p.m. Because 10 p.m. my time is noon and a lunchtime in Redmond, and that's basically the typical limit on. Yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to do too much longer. Of course, exceptions can happen. So,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean that I start working at 9 a.m. either. So, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 little kids, so this actually works out perfectly. So I get to be there for the evenings and the dinner time and then bedtime, and I put them to bed and I start my work.
Yep, exactly. So, and that's actually one thing. Well, you know this now really well, but it's quite common that people are so kind of stuck on 9 to 5 thinking. Then I all the time I have in meetings where people are like, oh my, isn't it super late for you? No, I don't work from 9 to 5. It's just completely normal. So it's okay. So let's move forward.
Okay,
so
exactly,
it's like,
exactly.
Because it makes me even feel bad about them kind of a feeling bad about me. So there's this kind of an interesting dynamics always on the meetings. So
absolutely. That I totally acknowledge on that. So I encourage people to consider this as my business hours. So don't think that I'm on a vacation and I'm attending a meeting in a vacation. It's not. This is my business hours. I signed up for this, so don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. That is by choice. Now, before we close, and thank you for the great discussion, I have to ask. So, what's going to happen after the year, or 10 months, or how long does this situation continues? Or do you know what's going to happen after?
No. I mean, I'm absolutely coming back to the United States. So, because my wife still has a job with the University of Washington there. And she only gets a year off for sabbatical. She needs to start teaching in person from September of 2023. So we will definitely be back in the US. Whether I get to be back in Microsoft, it depends on the economic situation. And because technically I got hired in Microsoft India, and then now I have to get rehired in Microsoft the United States. I'm sure my team will make it work, but there's always a chance there is this bad downturn or recession or whatever, and absolutely frozen headcounts.
Yeah,
anything could happen there. But that's okay. That's a risk I decided to take anyway.
Yeah, and it's you never know that you should not worry about things which you cannot know at this point. So it's just which is, by the way, really hard because people quite often start thinking, what about the future? What about? But it's just easier to basically watch and see what happens and adapt on that. So, which is for sure easier.
There's a lot of trade-offs. I mean, this is kind of, we didn't do this for my career growth or even financially. This is we're not getting paid in US dollars, so we get paid in Indian rupees. That's okay, which is still a great money for living in India, so I'm not going to complain about that. So this year was not about any of those things. This is year about having a different experience with the family. That's it.
Yeah. And what about the kid? What's the age of the kids? Just out of curiosity. So is the schooling getting impacted, or how does that work?
So that's another thing as well. So from a kid's point of view, we also got lucky. So one kid is just finishing kindergarten. We just finished kindergarten in the US. So first grade here. She actually got to be in second grade here, and the other kid is in kindergarten. So which is pretty much she's pre-kindergarten. So no real impact on their academic thing. They're also initially there was trouble adapting, but they are having fun in India now, so that's good.
I can imagine the cultural differences are quite significant still. So and as a kid being born in the US and learning that thing and then moving to India, it might be interesting. But kids are good on that, so they typically adapt as well. So which is good.
Yes.
But cool. Thank you, DC. I'm not going to take more time away from your family time because I know that this is your family time as we're recording this. But thank you, DC, for great discussion. This was good for me to catch up on why did you went to India as well? Because I never actually had a detailed discussion on that. But it actually also shows the flexibility and the tooling what we have, which is absolutely brilliant because, again, we can do this. We can work from home. And it almost feels like we're in the same room pretty much as we are having this discussion, which is awesome.
Absolutely. So. Yes.
And this is to build software like this. We can't be using the organizational structures of 20 years ago. You need different thinking in different organizations and different, title it whatever you want, but the skill set have to be more amalgamous than what it used to be, and that's why this works.
Absolutely. Really good. Thank you, DC, for this one. And for those who are watching and listening, or watching and listening, or whatever, we'll jump on the weekly articles right after this. Thank you, DC.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, DC, for the interview and discussion. And then we'll jump on the weekly articles. So let me share my screen and we'll start from there. And it is that button this week. And here we go. So quite a few articles from Microsoft and few videos and articles then from the community. After that, then few pointers to talk about this week. Here we go. So first of all, on the Microsoft Teams blog, we have again the monthly summary related on what's new in the Microsoft Teams. And again, this is a really awesome awesome summary blog post, which are telling all of the different cool things which are actually happening and have been added on the Microsoft Teams and actually on other products as well. SharePoint has a similar one, addressing also Viva updates within the last month. And a lot of cool features and capabilities which have been released within the last month. So great blog post summary on all of the things what are happening. Now, we also had a interesting blog post in the Microsoft Teams blog related on answering 6 common Microsoft Teams phone questions. So basically, how does the phone and calls work in the Microsoft Teams and how all of this actually works in practice. So typical set of questions what people might be considering or have, well, not aware related on the Microsoft Teams phone capabilities. Good point. I'm not actually widely using this pretty much ever, but there are actually good features in here and a good capabilities to double check as well. Now, we also had a blog post from Jeff Chen on Microsoft Teams performance improves with the framework upgrades. And this really comes back on showing the continuous investments we're doing on the performance side, which might not be actually that visible always. There is a lot of our engineering efforts being done on making the overall experience in Microsoft 365 more optimal and more faster. Then we had updates on the SharePoint side. So SharePoint Roadmap Pitstop October 2020 as well. And this is not just about SharePoint. So there's a lot of actually updates related on Microsoft Viva, OneDrive, Viva Engage, and so on. So there's a lot of cool capabilities which have been released and a great monthly post showcasing all of the goodness what's happening. Simple things like Office app is now coming in Microsoft 365 app. We talked about that one in the past as well. That's, by the way, the new logo of that application. It is actually pretty cool, getting aligned with the Viva logos and all of that. But a lot of great capabilities coming across the Microsoft 365 features. On the developer side, we did have a blog post related on announcing a new SharePoint Pages API for Microsoft Graph, and this is an announcement that it's coming in preview in November. So it's coming pretty soon by end of November, and that one will be in the beta endpoint, and you can do basic scenarios like get the list of all of the pages and news, get the consistent content of the page and a post, create a page, publishing page, and deleting page, and so on. So basic scenarios and capabilities are in the beta release, and it will be a continuous effort on adding new features and capabilities to this API endpoint. If you know and if you tested out the Graph endpoint for SharePoint Pages in the past, you've probably seen that it's pretty limited and it makes it quite hard to understand how that existing API is working. So all of this will change that API. So it's a breaking chain on the beta endpoint by having all of the new capabilities available. We also had a announcement of SharePoint Framework 1.16 release candidate. So release candidate is now out since last week on the 2nd of November, and the GA is happening in mid of November. I think our estimators right now is 15th of November or something like that. And of course, we're listing all of the different capabilities which are part of the 1.16 and the video and referencing the videos where we showcased some of these capabilities as well. So a lot of cool stuff across Microsoft Viva, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and so on for SharePoint Framework. Now, we also had a blog post from Tomomi Imura related on customizing F5 debugging in Microsoft Teams toolkit for Visual Studio Code. So basically what happens when I press the F5 and what are the tasks, what are the things, what's actually got executed, and how can I modify the tasks which are happening as part of that F5 experience. So really, really cool blog post and showcasing the flexibility and the power of the Microsoft Teams toolkit. Really, really cool stuff. Thank you to Momi on that one. Then we also had a breaking change in the Microsoft Graph Insights API. So this is a really small change, but it is a breaking change. So basically, in the existing V0 1.0 endpoint, there has been an inconsistent experience of getting site or OneDrive for Business. Currently, the API for specific API property has been always providing a site. But like documented like it should be, it is starting to now provide also OneDrive for Business for those sites which are actually coming from OneDrive for Business. Now, Rob Windsor had a great blog post related on registering SharePoint Framework list form customizers with CSAM and PowerShell. So how would I actually register my custom form customizer for a SharePoint list, which is overriding the native experience? And this is done in the content type level and in the content type in the list. And as you associate the properties in, then you can show a custom form which is rendered whenever you create an item, edit an item, or whatever you're looking into doing within a list level. There was an interesting blog post also from Prasham Sabardha related on the IE11. So this should be already, everybody should be knowing this already. Now IE11 is completely deprecated. You should not be using that. It's something which we don't recommend anybody to use. We haven't actually recommended it to be used for many years even. And starting from January 2023, in the SharePoint and OneDrive, there's going to be a hard block for IE11, which basically is saying shown here. So there's going to be a no, nothing's going to work here with IE11. Why? Well, IE11 is a really old browser, and it's not using the latest and security standards and the latest features what the browser technology has available. So we don't want to keep on investing on alternative experience in IE11 as we move forward of improving capabilities within the product. So basically, we need to leave some of the historical package behind. The Message Center show had a new episode 260, a great show from Daniel and Daryl, which goes through all of the latest Message Center messages from this admin center. And these are basically the messages which we as a Microsoft release for tenant administrators so that they will know what's coming up and what are the changes which are rolling out. And by the way, if you are a developer, if you have a developer tenant, you actually get this as well. You just need to go to the Message Center in the Tenant Administrator UX, and you can actually have a look on all of the upcoming features and announcements which are coming or rolling out within Microsoft 365. And this show basically just covers always the latest announcements which are happening there. For example, changes on navigation, PowerPoint Live in Teams, Viva Admin Experience, and so on. So a lot of new features available. Now, Paolo Pialorsi had a new Piasus TechBank episode 229, extending Azure AD objects with Microsoft Graph and schema extensions. He's been showing the schema extensions now with quite a few videos, and these are really great short videos explaining the different capabilities and different options which are available. So really awesome series of understanding why and why would you use the schema extensions and what do they actually do. He explains them, and then there's always a live demo on making things happen and how does it actually work behind the scenes. So really awesome stuff. Thank you, Paul, on that one. Now, Shane Young had a new video related on Power Apps and automate solutions and environment variables in SharePoint. So how would you take advantage of those environment variables for SharePoint in your Power Apps and Automate solutions. So really cool scenario. Bit of a long video, but his videos are super great on learning the basics capabilities within the Power Platform. So thank you, Shane, on that one. Now, Giuliano De Luca had a new video also on how to use actionable messages in Outlook with Power Automate, and that's actually really cool as well. So how can you post those actionable messages in Outlook or react on the actionable messages in the Outlook as well? So what would be the scenarios and stories and capabilities for this kind of automation? So basically what it means is that you can actually have a bit more polished experience in the Outlook. Let's see if I can actually find the example from here. for the experience. So you can actually send a specific email which actually has actions on it. So people don't need to click a link to perform the action. You can do the action directly in email. So really, really cool stuff. Now, Risa Durrani had a new blog post around error handling in Power Automate flows. So how would you actually do that? How would you catch those errors? Super important thing as well, because we want to make sure that if there are unexpected situations and exceptions, you deal with those gracefully. So really, really cool. Thank you, Risa, on that one. And then Laura Roches and Jolene Jobson had a new Power Hour, and this is a live session, which is then always recorded afterwards. So you can, if you are part of the live session, you can actually ask questions live from Jolene and Laura related on showcased capabilities. And this time they talked about the SharePoint page scheduling and private drafts. So what do they mean and how do they actually work? And then the final thing what I wanted to call out is that you should be always on a weekly basis following up on what's happening in the communitydays.org. And this is the centralized location where you can always find what are the upcoming events and what kind of events are available worldwide. So some of the events are virtual, some of them are in person, and some of them are hybrid. But there are a lot of events queued up across the world. And using this site, you can easily find the relevant and the most interesting events across Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Cloud capabilities. So thank you for that. Really, really cool stuff. And as we can see, there's even stuff scheduled already for June 10th, 2023. So you can see what's coming in the spring also for many events across the world. But that's all we're going to do actually now today related on PnP Weekly. Thank you, DC, one more time for joining us. And Waldek, hopefully you will feel better for next week. So we'll catch you back on the episode 187. But I think that's it for now. So thank you for watching or listening. Please use hashtag PnP Weekly in the Twitter if you are in Twitter and post, or if you have new content which you would like us to cover within the show as well. And DC, once again, thank you for that one, and we'll see you hopefully, or you'll hear us hopefully on next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.